Bonsoir. Bonsoir, good evening. I'm Bertrand Michaud. I'm the director of the Institut Français, and I'm very delighted to welcome you tonight here for this evening. We are delighted that you were able to make it for this event. It's part of a series of events that we organized with the French Chamber of Commerce, and that has been going on. That was going on before the lockdown, and we called it Outside the Frame. And the very idea was to bring together people from the creative sector, people also from business circles, people also from the public sector, also students, and to talk about the issues of the day. Tonight, the issue is quite topical. It's ahead of the COP26, and we'll be discussing fashion and sustainability. And we are very grateful to our great speakers who have accepted our invitation. I won't delve into it, and Sylvie will introduce all our speakers. But before passing on the floor to Marie-Lise, I just wanted to thank our partner, the Chamber of Commerce, to thank all my team who's been working on this event, and to extend a very warm thank to you, Sylvie, and to Tom, because you've been carrying this event since we first talked about it a few months ago already. And also thanks to Lauriane from the Chamber, who did really a great job. Without further ado, I'll pass on the floor to you, Marie-Lise.
Merci, Bertrand. I think you've done all the thanks. I'm going to say the same thing again, I'm afraid. I won't keep you long because we do have some fantastic speakers, and I'll be handing over to Sylvie to introduce them in a moment. I just wanted to, again, likewise, thank the Institut for collaborating and co-organizing this event with us. I'm particularly attached to this room. I went to school next door at the French Lycée, and I attribute most of my success in life to this room because this is where I came to study and find some peace and actually learn what I needed to learn. So I think I can say safely that the Institut played a key role in getting me where I am today. So good to be back, and a nice bit of circularity there. Not the circularity we're going to talk about, but nonetheless. As Bertrand said, here we are very close to COP26. Sustainability has long been on the agenda for the French Chamber. I think we've had a climate forum for over a decade, long before the days of Brexit and COVID, which have been taking up a lot of our bandwidth recently. And it's been really interesting for me in the last year to see businesses of all sizes across all sectors really gearing up ahead of COP26 and frankly looking well beyond that to how to address this big challenge. And I think the fashion industry and the luxury sector in particular have shown immense creativity and innovation, but we'll be hearing more about that soon. But I think it's something that the rest of the business community can really take from and learn from going forwards. So without further ado, thank you to all our speakers for giving us some of our precious time. Bertrand and the whole team at the Institut, thank you so much. More to come, I'm sure. And of course, Sylvie and Tom, who can't be here tonight, the co-chair of the Luxury Club at the French Chamber. I don't think this event would be happening without you. So thank you so much for your continued support. And I think that's about it. Just one last word, which is, I believe that La Durée, thank you very much, Romola, I can't quite spot you, for bringing us some little treats to enjoy after this. But that's enough from me for now. Over to Sylvie, and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bertrand and Marie-Lise. And I think you've thanked a lot of people. And actually, I think it's a perfect introduction to this evening because sustainability is about collaborating. It's about working together. No one can succeed alone in a lot of things, but it's particularly true in sustainability. So I'm sure we'll be hearing from our fabulous speakers about how they collaborate, what they do, and with who they work in order to progress. And indeed, we have some incredible speakers tonight, representing different parts of fashion and luxury industry. And they will share the journey they're on, the challenges they face, and what they are doing to address those challenges. So I hope it'll be great food for thoughts for all of us here, because again, together, we can make a difference. We will first hear from Anya Hindmarch in conversation with Rachel Arthur. Anya needs no introduction, but I can't help but sharing a few things about her. Oh, she's looking at me. No, don't worry. It's all good, I think, at least in my eyes. She was the first accessories designer to show on the London Fashion Week scheduled, proof of her innovation, her grit, and her capacity to innovate. She pioneered more than 10 years ago, I am not a plastic bag. And then more recently, I am a plastic bag using recycled bottles. And more recently, her new collection, Waste Not, Want Not, she continues to shine a light on environmental sustainability and engage her customers and other people to think about the subject, which I think is absolutely critical. She will be in conversation with the award-winning journalist Rachel Arthur, a writer and sustainability consultant, co-founder of Fashmash, which is a group of 500 people strong community of change makers and reflecting on what tomorrow is going to be, what it should be, and sustainability. And for those of you who haven't been to Anya's village, she's created the most amazing collection of 6 stores now in Pont Street. You should go there. You'll find great Christmas gifts, including Anya's latest book, When in Doubt, Wash Your Hair. And on that cryptic message, I will let you, Rachel, Anya, please, on the stage.
Excellent. Wow, what a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much to all of you for being here this evening. How nice is it to do something in person? This is actually the first time I've done anything in person in terms of an official event, so it's a real privilege to be here, especially in such a stunning venue. As Sylvie mentioned, my name is Rachel Arthur. I'm a writer, also a systems change strategist, focused on the fashion sector specifically and working at the sort of systems level, or attempting to, with organisations such as the UN Environment Programme and with Google. I am also the co-founder of, a community called Fashmash, and one of the things that we do there is really think about how we encourage dialogue and the sharing of ideas to shape the future of fashion. So I'm really delighted to be here this evening to try and assist with that same aim with such a leading name in this space. I won't go into any more detail on Anya because obviously we've heard a wonderful introduction about her already. So just to say welcome and thank you so much for being here tonight to talk about your work in sustainability.
Thank you. I'm actually much more interested in interviewing her. It's just fascinating. So we'll do this in a subtle way, but basically I'm going to grill you.
We can go back and forth. So we're going to have about a 20-minute chat, and then we'll open up to the floor. We'll have about a 10-minute Q&A before we then hand over to the incredible panel that's here this evening as well. So, Anya, to start us off, as we heard, back in 2007, you launched your I Am Not a Plastic Bag campaign. This was, correct me if I'm wrong, a £5 tote bag with a big statement that at that time, of course, was when we all still did use plastic bags. You know, it was hugely advanced, and just in terms of just making people think a little bit differently, stop and think. It led to queues outside Sainsbury's of reportedly 80,000 people and sales on eBay for the same tote for £300. My question to you is, did you realise the impact it could have at the time in terms of how you were laying the groundwork for change, which we've obviously all seen happen significantly just within that tiny part of what we're talking about this evening?
I think the answer is yes and no. In a sense, the reason that project came about was because I, like all of us, I think at that time, in 2007, had kept hearing the word environment, and frankly not really understanding what it really meant or what I could actually do as an individual. And so when someone knocked on my door to say they brought out a book called Change the World for a Fiver, which had 40 actions in the book, the first of which was wherever possible, refuse plastic bags, I had one of those light bulb moments thinking, I think I can amplify that message. I think that's what I can do with fashion. And fashion is the most amazing platform because, we can persuade people to wear, stiletto heels one minute and platform boots the next. We can change behavior in an amazing way. So I felt it was an amazing opportunity. And we did plan it fairly carefully the project was awareness. That's what we were trying to do. Stop doing what I was doing, which was, double bagging in the supermarket, getting home, putting them in the bin. Ridiculous, but it's a bit like smoking. It's a bit ridiculous. We all think probably now. Well, many of my children still smoke, I will be honest. But so I felt that I could use the platform of fashion to amplify the message. And we did set out quite carefully, quite naively in some ways, because it was such a political storm, frankly. But we set out to have a sort of three-tiered approach. One was to work with some, what I call the kind of golden circle of stores, the Colettes in Paris, the Corso Comos, the Isatans in Tokyo, and so on, Dover Street markets. And then as a second wave, to go to the coalface, if you like, which is the supermarket, and to launch it with them. And that's where it sort of built up and got more and more crazy. And then we launched it in Tokyo and in Hong Kong and in New York and on and on. And it did. 30,000 people stormed the Breeze Center in Taipei and 30 people went to hospital, just to give you a sort of sense of how mad it went. And clearly the project, which we stopped immediately after that, was not about anyone getting hurt, obviously. But it made a difference. And so did we plan it? I guess we did. We were, young and quite naive, so it sort of got more out of control than perhaps we had imagined. But we're proud of the project, actually, even though I'm sure we could do it probably differently and better today, but it was an important one.
No, you absolutely should be, and I think it's incredibly interesting what you say around this, the ability the industry has to change behaviours and make people think a little bit differently. As you say, back then it was completely normal for all of us to use dozens of plastic bags, and even the idea of reusing them was so foreign to us, and obviously now completely the norm. And you've gone on to obviously think about all sorts of different things in sustainability, circularity, zero waste, etc., etc. Long before most in this industry. In 2007 was very early with that one example of a project, and you've been doing lots of other things since. I wanted to turn now to the most recent version of that, which is your Return to Nature project, which has just launched, I believe, today. What is it? Let's start there.
Well, so after the original 2007 project, we then launched in 2020 the I Am a Plastic Bag project. So those two projects have been really interesting for me. It's sort of been my education in many ways, digging in as a consumer more actually than, I'm no expert at all, and I'm very far from perfect, just to say, but I'm really desperate to try and work out how I can make a difference, and I'm scared. I'm going to say that out loud. I'm really scared about climate change. We had our first climate incident, actually, in the summer where our store flooded with 5 foot of dirty water. And I think that's going to become the norm. I think it's going to become so frightening with flash floods and movement of people and scary stuff. So I want to sort of do something different. And whilst I was digging into that project and really learning with the I Am a Plastic Bag, I kept thinking, actually, whilst of course it's right to try and make rubbish into something that we keep in circularity, that's kind of obvious in a way, but actually, could I design something that actually never had a need for landfill? So if you think about nature, there is no waste in nature, as we all know. I remember once going on safari and seeing a zebra. It was lame and it died and it was immediately eaten. And we went back the next day and there was almost nothing left. So it was nutritive to the earth, to the soil. It was nutritive to the animals around it. So nature is so brilliant in its design in terms of nature does not need landfill. So what are we doing wrong? Us idiot humans, frankly. So it made me really think, and actually I set out to see if I could make some leather. We could talk for hours about why leather isn't bad, and we'll come back to that in a second. It's an interesting second topic. But make a leather bag that actually was made in a way that was responsibly sourced and not therefore harming the soil, that actually was tanned and procured and finished in a way that allowed the leather to not only biodegrade. So, for example, we had to look at different ways to finish the leather. So we've been working with this amazing activated liquid silk as a finish, because often leather is just coated in plastic, which is why your handbag, when it's raining, it's not a problem, because it's just coated in plastic. The rain rolls off it. How can we find different ways to have a leather that would biodegrade and then hopefully compost. So we've passed the biodegradability test, and we've passed 2 out of the compostability test. We've actually proven that it will compost privately, but we have to do this with an audited test. We had one hiccup in the process. It's been 2 years in the making, and it's been really, I think every line on my face. It looks a bit like leather right now. But we had one moment we thought, we've got it, we've done it, we've got the leather, it's great. The bag's beautiful, by the way, which is a really important part of it. And this could never end up in landfill. And we were wear testing the bag, and we went out in the rain, and it got acne. It got dark spots,
oh, wow.
and it swelled. And I was like, oh. And of course, as it dried, it was absolutely fine, but it wasn't going to be okay for our customer. We have to make things that are better, but the customer wants. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So we actually managed to find this amazing natural wax barrier. It's a fantastic family in England called the Chambers family, whose children are very allergic. And they had come up with lots and lots of household products which they reinvented in a very natural way. And so we found the wax that they use, and we applied that to leather, and bingo, the rain rolls off. You have to reapply the leather, like polishing your shoes every sort of month or so. But the rain rolls off, and we don't have the problem of the acne. So it's always a journey, frankly.
A huge journey. And I mean, just all of the things, you've said so many things in there that are actually very scientific, I'm sure. But you must have confronted so many more challenges along, as you say, 2 years in the process. Can you share some more?
That's my pet project. One of the things was that when you tan leather, 80 or 85% of the world's leather is tanned with chrome, which is not good for the soil. And yet that's the leather we all kind of want to wear. It has a lovely soft hand. It takes colour. It's the leather that most of you are probably using today. And the rest of it is either tanned with aldehyde, which is banned, it's a dangerous substance, or it's tanned with vegetable tanning, which sounds lovely, but it's not quite as lovely as it sounds, actually. That it uses a lot of tanning agent, and it cuts down trees. I mean, it's a sort of sustainable source of tanning, but it's not perfect. And so we were trying to find a way, could we come up with a way of tanning leather that has the hand feel of, if you like, a chrome leather, but doesn't leave chrome on the soil when it biodegrades. And so we work with these amazing people called Nera, who are from the Netherlands, who have this new way of tanning. It's called zeology, actually, and it replaces the chrome with zeolite, which is a type of clay, essentially, which is sort of abundantly available on the crust of the earth. So it's not, I mean, too much of it wouldn't be a good idea, but it's a much better alternative. So we worked with them. We worked with also the Scanhide, where we sourced our Swedish cattle from. And then we worked with amazing Richard Hoffman, who are a fantastically famous sort of very old tannery, to finish the leather with this liquid silk, which is very, very new. And then this fantastic wax, which is very, very sort of simple. And so we learned so much along the way, and we're still learning. And this is an ongoing journey. It's not going to finish here, but it's sort of got to the point where we have a really beautiful product, which I think is a really good alternative. And as much as anything is a conversation piece to discuss all these things. I think that's part of the process as well.
Yeah, hugely. And I love, to Sylvie's point at the beginning there, just all of those names you've listed, just such an incredible example of collaboration and how many different efforts are needed on this new journey, presumably way more so than previous experiences.
Well, sort of yes and no. I mean, it's interesting. When you actually look at the total chain of custody, actually, for a fashion product, it's kind of shocking, actually, how many processes there are. What's interesting, I think, is the idea of it's sort of eco, not ego, going forward. It's like share, be transparent, be really honest about the stuff. I mean, I still think there's bits that we can improve on this product for sure, but we kind of wanted to jump in and kind of go for it. And so I think that transparency is really important. Opening it up so that other people are going to go, love what you've done, but actually we can improve on that. And that's what's nice. We've worked from Scanhide, from the Swedish cattle, the traceability, and to the ear, so we really know that there's no deforestation. And through the tanning process, the finishing, all those things. Everyone's worked as a group. We've had more and more, I can't tell you how many Zoom calls we've had on this particular subject, but it's an absolute privilege to work with these people and really learn from them. So it's sort of been my degree.
Yeah, amazing. And you have this great line that you use often. You haven't yet said tonight, but you have talked about honesty and you've talked about transparency, but you often say that it's about progress, not perfection. And I love that, and I think it's such a good learning for everybody that's working in sustainability. How important is that to you with everything you do, and do you think it's something that can be more embraced, or maybe is already being more embraced across the industry at large?
I think it's imperative because, they always say that perfection is the enemy of good. And I think in fashion, inevitably, and there is a lot of greenwashing. I mean, we all know that. And it's very hard because there's no traffic light system. I mean, you know, we're all very aware of what we're putting in our mouths now. You know, there's ingredients, there's calories, there's provenance. And we need to be as aware and as obsessed by what we're putting on our backs, essentially, what we wear. But I think that... totally forgotten your question. What was your question?
Progress,
really long day.
Progress,
it's been
not
a long day of
perfection.
launching this project. Okay, be kind to me.
Understandably
so I think
so.
the thing is, there's also trying to square the circle of how do you make a business that's employing people and profitable, which we have to do, because, by the way, if we stop being profitable and we stop offering jobs, then sustainability will slip down everyone's agenda. So we must not be embarrassed of being successful. That's really important. And we need these things to be profitable. Monsieur Hermès is smiling there. We need these things because that's really key. They need to be successful. But there's many areas of my business that are still very far from perfect. And we're trying, so yes, of course, we've signed up to charters and we're committed and we're trying to do every single thing we can. But there are areas where I haven't found solutions yet. And yet if I take away that bit of the business, I will destabilize my sort of ecosystem. So I think it's important to just be honest about, you know, I can't move that one yet, but I've got a few things in work that might change it. That's really good. This one's a really exciting one. And you just keep working through. And I think it's really incumbent on all of us not to criticize, but to praise when people are actually making a difference, and for the press to be smart around this, actually, because it's hard. And by the way, the R&D that goes into these sorts of projects is, I mean, talking about wanting to be profitable, it doesn't make you very profitable. You know, there's a lot of love and energy and effort that goes in.
No, I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. It's very, very interesting hearing you talk about, obviously, these very specific and intricate things that obviously you've learned, the challenges you faced, and the sort of results that you have found in this journey that you're on in sustainability. But I also know you've been thinking much more widely about the role of the whole system, talking about things that maybe you can't individually change, and where you and what you do fits into all of that. So you mentioned to me that you've confronted things like overproduction and markdowns and out-of-sync seasons, which really can't have been particularly easy, but maybe you could share a little bit about how you've been thinking about that over the course of the past year or so during COVID.
Well, it's something I think all of fashion's been, well, I know all of fashion's been thinking about a huge amount, because we're all sort of stuck in this hamster wheel of these cycles, and it's really hard, and it's something I've been very vocal about for a long time because it feels silly. And I think what has happened is that we used to, if you take a season, we used to deliver beautiful leather bags for winter, beautiful, you know, coats and fashion delivers, all things you want in September. You come back from your holiday, you've got a nice tanned arm, you want a nice winter coat. And then what's happened is that would drop in September, and then there used to be the January sales. Of course, everyone needs a sale discount period to clear their stock and to move on. And what happened is that the January sale moved to December, because I think that with the amazing opportunity of the internet, it rather threatened retail. So some of the big retailers then got in a panic and needed to make their like-for-like numbers. So they brought the sale period, hugely rich sort of revenue driver, into December, which kind of muddled the system. That in turn crept forward, and I think probably sort of desperation in some ways of sort of bricks and mortar sort of struggling, into November for Black Friday. So what then happened is you were delivering winter coats in September when you want them, but they're going on sale in November, which means they've only got 8 weeks on the shop floor, which means that doesn't work for anyone. So therefore, the retailers were then saying to all of us designers, will you please deliver your stock now in May? So it has longer on the shop floor. So then you're delivering a winter coat in May. And the whole thing got out of sync. So I've been very involved with the British Fashion Council for 10 years, and we've been talking about how we can kind of break out of this cycle. But of course, you can't dictate sale dates. You know, there's all quite delicate competition law, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, businesses, you know, were struggling with the threat, if you like, or the opportunity of the internet. So I just thought, in a way, I think I'm just going to do it. And lockdown seemed like the perfect moment to where we've all kind of jumped off, if you like, the hamster wheel for a bit, to say, we're actually going to deliver our winter product in September, and it's going to go on markdown in January or straight after Christmas. And we're going to try and get out of this drug, if you like, of this system. And it's hard. We spoke to all of our customers. Everyone agreed. In fact, we've had to have a couple of conversations sometimes when things slide on. We're like, no, we're sticking to this. What was interesting is when we did it the first kind of Black Friday that came up, and we sort of did a big campaign called Waste Not, Want Not, and saying, actually, we are going to not do this, and in fact, we're going to donate all of our profits for the weekend of Black Friday to an environmental charity. And we had the most unbelievable sales weekend, almost slightly annoying that we did because all of our profits are going to charity, which is obviously a lovely thing. But it was an amazing reaction. So the point is, customers do care, I think. I think they feel it's all got stupid. So I think we do need to just step back. And there's a price to that. Everyone's just chasing. And I totally understand and respect that. But I think if we don't, we're just going to spiral down into a complete mess, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's important to sort of, I suppose, balance the commercial side of what you're doing there and what makes sense and what has spiraled and has got to the point where actually it's not working for anyone. With actually what we're talking about here from a sustainability perspective too, and sort of all of the negative impact that has had in terms of what we have sort of established as the norms in terms of customer behaviour and what we're encouraging. Just going back to something that you said earlier, you mentioned about the flooding in your store, and I wanted to just almost end on this point before we open it up to the audience.
Just like a regular coughing fit.
I think this is really fascinating to just think about that notion of experiencing climate change firsthand within your business, obviously as personally, individually as well. And I just wanted your opinion in terms of just how crucial you think it is that people have or get the reality of this being a crisis that is here right now and not somewhere that's really far away and not somewhere that's not affecting anything to do with our businesses, apart from maybe right at the beginning, but we can get round that. Can you just explain to me a little bit about how important you think that is and whether you think it is actually something that we can impart across not just other business leaders, but citizens at large in this country and across the world?
Well, I alluded to it earlier, that I think it's really very frightening, the situation we're in. And, when I was talking to this academic who talked about the fact that my children, it's too late for my children, he said, because, the fact is there's going to be overcrowding and flooding and scarcity of food. And, it accelerates and goes wrong quite quickly and displaces people and so on. And that's a hideous thing to talk about. It's almost so big that it's almost too much to take in. But this guy's really bright, and it really made me stop and think. And then this summer, we've seen floods, we've seen heat waves, we've seen Germany, we've seen it all over. We saw New York. And, that's a real reality. So we can't pretend it's not going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. So we need to act really fast and really urgently. I think COVID was an amazing, terrible, but an amazing thing to show us how we can change our behaviour dramatically. I mean, if someone had said to you on New Year's Eve on 2019, as we all celebrated the new decade, that we were going to be actually locked in our homes, not going to work, not travelling, and closing all our stores, shops, factories, etc., I mean, wouldn't have believed it. So it is amazing what we can do. I think this is sort of, sad to say, this generation's war. And we've got to step up, haven't we, really, and find ways. But we don't need to be too miserable about it in a way, because I'm a real optimist, actually. I think that it's incredible. You only look at what we did with the vaccine, and it's incredible what we can pull off. So there's going to be a combination of reducing our emissions, for sure, of offsetting, which I think is a reality, because as you grow businesses, it's quite hard to grow and reduce carbon. So there's going to be quite a lot of offsetting, and that's going to be part of this. It won't happen alone, I don't think. And then, please God, could there be some amazing technological idea? And I think there will be. Unfortunately, people don't change their behaviour until things get quite desperate. So it's how do we project onto people to say this is real and it's now? For me, that was the moment when I had 5 foot of sewagey water in my basement in Sloane Street, where you suddenly just kind of think this could be kind of once a month. That could mean that we live on a floodplain in London. That could mean that all the house prices go. It could get quite scary. So we need to project. And we're creative people and we're talented people, we can fix this, but it's now. So I'm probably scared. Yeah.
It's interesting to think about, we owe it to our children, we owe it obviously to our future customers, and we owe it to those marginalised communities around the world that so much of our industry is obviously based on otherwise. That's the most phenomenal amount of insight in 20 minutes. I'm really pleased we have stuck to time. So I'm going to throw it open to the floor. We've got 10 minutes. Hopefully we can fit in a good 3 or 4 questions, and then I've got one that I want to add to end on. So does anyone have a question for Anya? Right at the front, yes, please.
Do you feel that, especially in the fashion industry, that a lot of fashion leaders are not looking at how they can be better sustainably or responsibly at the beginning of the journey versus everyone trying to do so much at the end? So working with their suppliers, working with their manufacturers, because unfortunately in fashion, a lot of it is a third-party relationship where you just know people via phone. You don't really know the people. feel like that is a huge missed opportunity that fashion weeks are not taking the reins on to get to know that they need to start being sustainable at the beginning versus the middle or the end.
Well, there's all the scopes. I'm quite new to scopes. I'm sure you're all experts on scopes. I had to kind of like, what's a scopes? I pretended that I knew what I was talking about the other day. So it's very hard, honestly, to dig right down and to go right back. And it's very hard to have the bandwidth to do that when you're trying to, survive a pandemic, keep everyone employed, juggle. I mean, it's really difficult. So I actually think the businesses are doing quite a lot, actually. And I think we're all trying to understand what actually matters. The one thing that I think is really exciting is some of the biggest businesses have the biggest opportunity, because I'm a little business, so I can dig in and do what I can, but I don't have much weight in the supply chain. And so those of you who have big businesses, not looking at anyone particular, have an amazing opportunity, because if you say to your suppliers, we want this, they will do it because their livelihoods are threatened by it. And I had a lovely moment actually at Linea Pelle, which is the Bologna leather fair, and I was seeing all the different stands of all the amazing leather suppliers, and there was one that was absolutely rammed. I mean, so many people on it. Was kind of going, you could see all the other suppliers kind of going, what's going they've got? And actually they were offering something that was a more sustainable alternative. And so suddenly what happens is the next season you go and all of the stands are doing the same. So actually profit is an amazing carrot to change. So I'm a real believer in profit. And I think what's happening is, as you go on this journey, as I've just done on this particular bag we launched today, you then keep going back and back and back right to the cradle, and actually sort of getting deep into the corners. So I think that it's everyone is working really hard on this. I mean, I don't think anyone is not taking it seriously. Actually, everyone's trying to balance it with profit, trying to balance it through this difficult time. And I think the more you do, the more you want to do. It's like, not quite me, but when you go to the gym, you suddenly want to eat a bit better. Do you know what I mean? Not quite me. But you definitely, you kind of, it becomes a bit of a bug, it's quite exciting. You can make a change. So I think that it's hard, but I think it's really on people's agenda, and it needs to be. Yeah.
I love that analogy. I'm going to steal that one in the future. Anybody else? I should have said also, if you could just say, or go right back there, if you could just say your name and where you're from, that would also be really helpful.
Sustainable for humans, because if we just spend on 10 hours per day, 7 days per week just working on objects, is that object still sustainable? And the second thing is, I feel like as a human we are sometimes driven by purpose, meaning that we just want to prove that we can make something great. But do you stop yourself as a designer and say, okay, this year I'm going to just put it on 3 bags or like 3 coats, because if I keep producing, then people will keep buying, and maybe that's not going to be sustainable at the end, even though I do use sustainable materials. I don't know if that makes sense.
Thank you. I think I heard most of that. So if I no, it's just a little bit. So if I don't totally answer it, just interrupt me, okay? Yeah. I think what you were saying is, why produce more things? And I think it's very valid. I mean, the right thing for the environment is for us all to stay home and grow our own vegetables and not move, probably. That's just not a reality, I think. So I'm trying to be quite pragmatic, and I'm no expert, can I just say. I'm just the layman here in the room, trying to find my way through. So the fact is that we can't do that, although I have it now. I do spend quite a lot of time in the country, and I quite love it. It's fascinating, actually. Suddenly they slaughter a cow in the village, and the whole animal is sold and put in everyone's freezers within an hour on WhatsApp, and you kind of go, this is the way forward, surely. But the fact is, people are going to be buying things, and my earlier point about profit, I think, is important, because I'm quite nervous that if we all stop doing stuff, actually the economy will not work, and then actually that does an awful lot of harm, because we can't do some really important good things like hospitals and roads and all those important things. So how do we square that circle? And I think that it's about saying, okay, we know, for example, my approach with this leather that I'm working with, we know that people want chrome leather. So how how can I make what people want in a better way? Not a perfect way, but in a better way, so that then actually next year I can perhaps even go one step further. So I think it's about being pragmatic, and that's quite difficult because, of course, the right thing is to do, is to really rein in. But I think if we're not realists, we probably won't. We won't get the audience. People also give up. So that's my approach, rightly or wrongly. But I think there are certain things that really make no sense. And I think the most stores we ever had was about 60 stores around the world. And it felt, for me, and this is just a personal thing for me and my brand, that didn't feel very authentic, actually. It felt a bit sort of unmodern, the sort of cookie-cutter approach for that, for me. And it's very different for every brand. So this is not criticizing. But we opened this little village that we spoke about at the beginning, because actually I think the word local is going to be very important going forward. And my entire career has been to the backdrop of the word global. Literally globalization, global supply chains, global distribution. And I think it's going to reverse. And I think that's going to be very interesting. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity, actually, in terms of supply chains onshoring again. And we have very little manufacturing here in the UK, for example. France, you still have your manufacturing, which is fantastic. But I literally watched the production being sucked out of the UK to the Far East. And I think it's going to reverse, which is really quite exciting. So there's going to be loads of change, which is going to be quite major, actually. Some of it really good, but I'm trying to be pragmatic. That's my approach. I hope that answers your question. I'm so sorry if it doesn't totally.
A bit. I was more thinking, like some design.
I might need a microphone. So sorry.
Oh, does that work better?
Yes,
yeah,
so
definitely.
Just
I can hear
really,
myself.
really quickly, and then we'll just hop on.
Of course. So, I was more thinking, Enzo Mari, for instance. He's dead now, sadly, but he was a furniture designer, and he would just go to the essence of that object. And I was wondering whether that was the approach that you would have. Like, if I have to design an object, I try to make it more usable as possible, so people will just use it over time and not necessarily need the they won't need to buy another bag
totally.
for 10.
And I think you're absolutely right. Of course, that's the dream. It's just quite hard if you have a business that's based on selling a turnover of X, and your whole structure of cost is related to that, to then suddenly only produce one thing and not 5, when actually, so it's just about how do you transition to a better, it's quite a complicated subject, but of course that's the dream. But it's also about being pragmatic with businesses that have a certain infrastructure and employ lots of people, that we can maintain employing them. And actually, I don't think it's always wrong to consume if you consume well, and the provenance is good, and it is less but better, quite literally, and that's employing people. So there can be an ecosystem, I believe, that works, I think, environmentally, respectfully, that also allows for profit and for growth. So that's the thing we're all navigating. It's hard.
I think that would be the perfect segue to the panel on circularity. But let's just take a question here at the front.
When I think about Anya, I think about creativity and innovation. Already that amazing fossil that you have in the back of your office. I mean, you have created something very innovative with upcycle leather. So can you talk us a little bit more about what inspires you? Because from an environmental perspective, you pretty much tick all the boxes. So I'd love to know a little bit more about what inspired you to upcycle, because the collection was amazing and you haven't bought anything new. So can you talk us a little bit more about that?
Well, it was very, I mean, again, all this stuff is common sense, isn't it, really? I think that's the important thing. There's not rocket science here. I just worked out that every time you make a beautiful handbag, you cut the middle of the skin, because that's the most beautiful part. And there's and you use the edges for the underneath and the inside and, all the different bits. But there's an awful lot of waste. I can't remember what the stat is now, but it was a pretty shocking statistic of how much of that beautiful raw material, all the energy that's gone into that, is wasted. So I just wanted to actually look at, could I make something beautiful from that waste? And also just talk about that as a concept. And I think that's the other really important thing, is just to keep sort of raising these ideas about, could we make beautiful things from things that would have gone in the bin? Because it makes no sense to put things in the bin. So it's really just trying to apply common sense. I mean, I really am not ticking all the boxes. Trust me, I'm far from perfect, but it's just trying to find my way through like everyone else.
We are almost at time, but I have one question I just wanted us to end on. You are so humble in everything that you're doing, saying that you're not an expert. And as everyone, I think, can attest to in the room, you are an enormous leader in this. But you're also a huge advocate for the rest of the industry to obviously make progress as well. So my question is, if you had a call to action for the audience and for fashion at large in the context of sustainability tonight, what would it be?
I think it starts with one area of your life. So for me, obviously apart from the work projects I've done, I started with my bathroom. This is going to sound rather trite, I'm so sorry, but I had one of those bad days where I threw away a shampoo bottle and a conditioner bottle and a toothpaste and like 5 big plastic things. And we all know when you throw something away, there is no away. So just start with one area. Can you reduce, for example, plastic in one area of your life? So chip off one thing. That was mine. And it becomes quite addictive, and it's quite fun when you tick that box. You then move on to the next thing. So start somewhere small.
Amazing. Anya, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anya and Rachel. Thank you. And you can hear me, I've got a loud voice, I've been told so many times. So thank you so much for a hugely inspirational conversation. I'm sure everybody in the audience is like me and, our head bursting with ideas and you've been spectacular both of you. So thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce our panel. So we are going to move from design to circularity. And we have an equally star-studded panel, which will be moderated by Diana Verde Nieto, in discussion with Gemma Curtin, Hasna Kourda, Bertrand Michaud, and Patrick McDowell. And on a little side note, whilst everybody is taking their seat, I also want to, and you talked about sustainability and the future and why it's important. It's important for us, but it's important more for our children. And congratulations, if you didn't notice, to Rachel, who is 7 months pregnant. So thank you also for coming, 7 months pregnant, and being completely sharp-witted, as always. And also, thank you to Hasna for being with us tonight. She delivered 20 days ago. So a round of applause. So the future is in good hands with the two of you. Thank you. So let me introduce you now all our different panelists. And I will start with our moderator, Diana. Diana is the co-founder of the sustainability luxury agency Positive Luxury, which, in addition to research and advocacy and consultancy, also offers a third party, an independent sustainability certification called the Butterfly Mark, which a number of small and larger brands have taken, and more recently the whole LVMH group, I believe, has said that they would use the Butterfly Mark certification. Sorry.
Who is that? Who is that?
Who is that? I'm not sure. I'll tell you later. Then Gemma Curtin is the curator of the upcoming Waste Age exhibition at the Design Museum, which actually opens in 2 days, on the 23rd of October, and which I'm sure all of you will be very keen to go to and to attend. And this exhibition, I'm sure Gemma will be talking about it a lot better than I will, but it explores the importance of design and intent to minimize waste, as well as the notion of waste reuse and revalorization, which also Anya has spoken a little bit about. Then Hasna Kourda is the founder of Save Your Wardrobe. I said Save My Wardrobe but it's Your Wardrobe, a digital wardrobe platform that offers users personalized recommendation and help maximize the use of one's wardrobe, also offering suggestions, but also direct links to an ecosystem of repairers, resellers, etc., etc. So sort of once you've loaded up your wardrobe, not only you know what you have, but also you can access a whole ecosystem of other partners. And Hasna, I'm sure, will talk to us about the recent partnership that she's just signed and launched with Zalando, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Bertrand Michaud, just here, who has been with the Hermes family for over 30 years, growing the business for Hermes in Asia, in the Middle East and in India. So I think we can safely say that the whole success of Hermes is squarely on Bertrand's shoulders for all these years, and more recently here in the UK, Ireland and South Africa. He will share with us Hermes' ethos on sustainability. And I would like to quote, I think, something that your boss said, which I thought was amazing as a definition. He defined luxury as something which can be repaired, which means several things. Not only that it's quality and it can be repaired, but you want it because you want to repair it, because what you don't want, you don't mind. So, which I thought was an amazing way to describe luxury. And last but not least, Patrick McDowell, who is an engaged designer from Central St. Martin, nominated by Anna Wintour for Today for Tomorrow Stella McCartney Award, and who now designs both under his name with recycled and reclaimed fabrics, but also works with a lot of very famous names that he will share maybe with us later, and has become also the sustainable advisor on design for the Italian brand Pinko. So, as you can see, a wonderful panel to talk through circularity, and I will leave the floor to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting us today, and thank you very much, everybody, for your time, and Anya for such an inspiring opening. I'd like to start by asking you, who knows what is the definition of sustainability? Hands up. Okay. Do you want to share it with us?
Yeah, it's something, I don't know the exact wording, but it's something about it puts back into the earth the same or more than it took away from the earth in the process of being made.
Kind of.
Something around that, right?
Yes.
It leaves it either the same, but it's like an overdraft or a credit, right? It leaves it either balance zero or with credit.
Right. Well, there is a definition for sustainable development which was coined by Prime Minister Harlem Brundtland. She was twice the Prime Minister of Norway, and she defined the term sustainable development as meeting the needs of today without compromising future generations' needs. If you pause, this is deadly easy. Basically, everything that you do, you need to think about what will happen in the future. And of course, circular economy and circular business models are massively important, but they are not it to actually run a sustainable business. It's about the context. So the number one topic, which you alluded in terms of COP26, is about how we'll actually move away our dependency of fossil fuels. That is the number one topic on our agenda, and is how are we going to decarbonize the economy. And that is probably the biggest topic. Obviously, circularity plays a massive role onto answering some of these puzzling questions, basically. So, after kind of creating a little bit of a context, I would like to ask everybody very succinctly the same question because this is a hard matter to moderate. So I like to have this as an equalizer. So what is circular economy and why is it important to your business? And I'd like to start with Bertrand, please.
Ooh la la. Does it work?
Hello.
Okay, this one works. So thank you, Anya. It was very inspiring to listen to you. And as you said, in my case, I'm the layman as well. Circular economy and sustainability, I think we didn't mention the people, and I think that they should also be at core of what we do and what we try to do. Of course, I'm talking on behalf of Hermes, and I just want to come with the humility of a craftsman. We try, every day we try to do better, and we are not perfect, and we know that. What we did in the past, the company was has been set up in 1837, so before we realized that we had to work in a circular economy, and we did some mistakes. So we're going to correct them, and this is what we do. And I think the people have to be at the core of what we do, and for us, the territoriality, 80% of our projects are made in France. We are employing 6,000 out of 15,000, 6,000 craftsmen, and it's made in France. We know our suppliers, and I give you one figure. It's the top 50 suppliers have been working with Hermes for more than 25 years. So it's durability. I think this is a key word for us: durability of the object, durability of the people who have been working with us. 30% of the people working for Hermes have been working for more than 17 years. So it's quite a long stint. I've been working there for 30 years, so I'm quite happy. And of course, Jean-Louis Dumas, you were quoting, Sylvie, you were quoting Jean-Louis Dumas for the, what is durability and luxury. But I think that luxury, if we come back to the roots, is really to go to the office with pleasure. And if you know that you're not doing good, you cannot go with pleasure to the office. So a lot of thoughts, and I will be happy to share, but that's it.
Thank you. I mean, Patrick, you are an expert on circularity. You've done really incredible things. So what is circular economy to you?
I guess like a dictionary definition that I always try to go by is something that has a negative or a positive impact on the planet and the people. Which sounds a bit dry now I'm saying it out loud. But I mean, in terms of business, I think it's a really interesting point too, because of course, if you try to recirculate things that previously would not be circulated back into the beginning of a business, then the business becomes, if you do it in the right way, more profitable. So it can be incredibly interesting in terms of the profit of a business too, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is actually important. We do live in a society that's kind of based on it, so we have to kind of think, how can it work? And I think it's really important that we let people try, because sometimes it's so scary. Because it is scary, right? Like you said, it's scary. And if we don't let people try and fail, people are never going to get anywhere. So we have to praise the right things, like you said, and be mindful about what we say and how we spread things that are negative, because sometimes it makes people stop and switch off, which is really what we need to avoid.
Thank you. Hasna, I mean, you have a circular business and a circular business model, but what is circular economy and what is important for your business?
Yeah. So I might bring the boring definition, as I'm an economist by background. So circular economy is this set of initiatives that puts again in the market things that we've used or repairs and things like that. So it can be also supported by some policies, government policies. So this is what circular economy means to, as a general. But to me, actually, what Anya mentioned earlier really resonates with me, because I come from Tunisia and then a small island in the south, and from as long as I can remember, the threat of the island being floated by the sea and disappearing by 2050, which is not too far from now, is something that I grew up with. And whenever I come back home, I can see the level of the sea, and the house that we used to go during the summer is slowly getting, well, it's a good thing we walk less to the, we can walk less to the sea, but but actually it's really anxiety triggering. So circular economy can also be the savior for our next generation. And I'll also come back to you when you mentioned the definition earlier of sustainability and thinking about future generations. This is where I think the initiatives we see at the moment is lacking of the element of building for the future. So if I can add to the definition I mentioned earlier and insist on that, I would think it would draw a full definition of circular economy.
Thank you. And Gemma, I mean, you're doing an exhibition on waste, but I'd like to go back to the question about what is circular economy and why it's important to you.
So from my point of view, a circular economy is something that keeps our resources, materials in use or in the supply chain for as long as possible, or indefinitely, rather than making them waste, rather than throwing them away, which generally means landfill or incineration. So it's just retaining those resources at maximum value.
Absolutely, thank you very much. So, I mean, we are here in two parts. One is the fact that we have circular business models, which is the re-commerce, so it's resell, recycle, repair, and that is going to be not something that is happening sporadically. This is going to be a very core part of most brands in the future, and there is a business model for it, a space for it. And then is circularity as circular economy per se, which is absolutely right, Gemma, in terms of make sure that the raw materials that we use then can be recycled or compostable and or can be part of the system, and therefore will be great to be able to reuse them. I'm like, you know, I'm not a plastic bag, or I am a plastic bag, which is completely done by bottles, water bottles. So, I mean, I'd like to go to you, Patrick, because you're doing design, which is upcycling and recycling. So, what is circular design? And how can businesses embed circularity from a product innovation perspective? This is a little bit what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting when I do panel talks like this, because for me, I'm basically saying everything you said. It's common sense, really, a lot of the time. I think if your business already owns things, it makes sense to do something with them. If you can't sell them, or you're having to sell them off or burn them, why not remake them? Of course, the thing that everybody's flabbergasted by is that actually the people that made them know how to remake them too, really easily. It's a no-brainer. When you go back to the people that actually made the product, they know how to redo it. So at that point, it's kind of like, why wouldn't we? If we already invested in the product, we've got someone like me or you or any designer could do it. Why wouldn't we redesign them, you know? It's also a great kind of really authentic marketing message that you can tell as well. Did I answer your question? I'm not sure.
Yes, you have. And I mean, Gemma, waste is a big issue, and you are doing an entire exhibition opening in a couple of days at the Design Museum. So what is the big issue in the luxury industry with waste? And how can we reduce it, either through recycling or upcycling? I mean, and what inspires you to create this?
Yeah, I've got a few slides to show of some of the pieces we have in the exhibition, which I think it's just quite nice to see. I'm no expert in waste, but it's been really inspiring to see designers who are pioneers of this. So we've got pieces in the exhibition by Stella McCartney. These are Phoebe English, and the next one I think is Bethany Williams. And so those are all people, and this is Philip Lim and Charlotte McCurdy. And this one in particular is, so there is upcycling, there's using waste to make things, so, or this one using biomaterials. So this, instead of using oil-based polymers for the sequins, these sequins are actually made from biodegradable algae and a biopolymer. So it's just, I think it's really thinking about the materials that are in use. Something like 80% of all the environmental impact of the things we have, the decisions are made at the design stage, and that is what materials you choose to use. And I think it's interesting about luxury, you know, it's a state of mind as much as anything, you know, the care and attention and the research that a lot of these designers have gone into to ensure that their supply chains, which are quite difficult to go outside the usual framework of supply, and to find waste sources, or to develop new materials such as sequins made of algae. So it's really inspiring, I think. And there are designers out there who are making huge changes in will motivate how we consume and how we think about consumption. But yes, retaining, so either regenerating materials or using waste materials, or then using biomaterials that don't have such a big impact.
Absolutely, and keeping them in the system, so if these pieces can last forever, that would be amazing. And I like to talk about durability. I mean, Bertrand, you talked about, you know, the ability to repair luxury, and that, therefore, that is the absolutely intrinsic value of it. How can a company like Hermès think about circular economy?
The point, I'm not lucky tonight. It's a sign, maybe. So why don't we use? We should not use microphones. You know, it starts like this. You say the small step. Huh? No, circularity. Of course, we are trying to make products which are lasting. And I got, when I was working a bit on this in the topic a few days ago, I got a figure. We repair about 140,000 products a year. So, and those products have been with our friends and clients for almost 10 years. So at least you know that 50% of the turnover of Hermes are handbags. And those handbags are going to last. And we hope that some clients will buy them and give them to their daughters or friends. So that's a way of circularity. We are still using techniques which are very, very strong in order for the product to last. And Anya, I want to come back on what you said about the public sales. We don't put our products on public sales at the end of the season. We wait 1 year. So in order to slow the pace, it's what you were saying. So once again, I'm not saying that you are right, but at least we are trying to slow the pace. And durability, I was mentioning durability for the employment, because it starts like that, and then durability for the products. It's another. I think it's really at the heart of what we are trying to do.
Thank you. And everybody knows that obviously the pre-love market of Hermès is incredibly valuable. So actually, I don't know if you know that Hermès bags are classed. It's an asset class, means it's traded. So Bonhams, Christie's, and so on are looking at that in auctions. And actually, when in the Middle East especially, when women are getting divorced, the wardrobes and specifically Hermès bag, which hold the value, are becoming an asset class. So congratulations. Everybody.
I prefer our bags to be offered when people get married and split when they divorce. Let's be positive, you know.
Of course, but well, anyway, so it's a great investment piece. I mean, Gemma, this is one for you. I mean, sorry, Hasna. What is the difference between circular economy and circular business models?
So we've defined earlier circular economy, and it's this set of things that helps products and produce remain in circulation, and it can be initiatives, it can be policies, and so on. And circular business models are what supports that circular economy. So it can be, like I mentioned, rental, repairs, small shops that round the corner that do alterations, family-owned businesses. And now we are seeing a surge in innovative businesses that are supported by new technologies, and Save Your Wardrobe is one of them. So what we are aiming to do is creating this digitally enabled circular platform where we help people understand what they have, understand their shopping habits, trying to influence them in the right way, and showing them alternatives to the linear business model that is buying and then throwing away. And obviously for luxury, and especially products either from Hermès or from Anya Hindmarch, there is value that can be handed down to children or to friends, but for other products where aftercare is not always something that we think of, or upcycling is not something that comes to mind when you buy from fast fashion, this is where we want to change the narrative. We want to bring this accessibility or democratizing aftercare to a larger scale, and this is also something that we've launched with Zalando today, actually. So today it's public, but we've been working on that for this during the summer, and the idea is to emphasize the value of skill owners, the people who have the ability to repair, to bring back the value to items that we've purchased, and it's really important in the luxury space because you want to keep things in good shape for as long as possible, but. It's very rare to find an Hermes bag in landfill or Anya Hindmarch in landfill, but it's much more happening for fast fashion items or for other brands where the value or sentimental value is not holding. And we think that to shift the consumer habits and the behaviors to a more circular one, we need to embrace technology, to embrace new circular business models that can be rental as well, resell, and so on. And our position is to build this technology platform to make sure that is easy to adopt. And I just wanted to mention a little story about my family who have been really into circularity because obviously they were living in an arid weather and climate, so they had to embrace circularity. So it was part of their own kind of lifestyle, and they are committed to that because it's their livelihood. However, here in Europe and Western culture, it's not something that we think of, and it's not part of our lifestyle. However, we have this really amazing set of new technology that can make it extremely streamlined, and even you don't think about it anymore. It's so easy to adopt things. It's just the convenience part of it that makes it easy to access, and this is where our business model is really focusing on.
Thank you very much. And I mean, we have seen the growth of Depop, for example, which is not just luxury, but everything. Yeah. And the Real and Vestiaire collective with valuations of 100 million. I mean, this is the new normal. And I mean, I'm interested, perhaps to you, Patrick, in terms of, do you think that there is a business model for circularity for what in the space that you're working on?
Is there a business model currently? Yeah. Yeah, mine. Yeah. So I work with other, so I am a fashion designer, but I work with other fashion brands to redesign their past season pieces, fabrics, and trims into new pieces. It's super simple. I didn't reinvent a wheel there, but I was very lucky to have a very old grandmother who was born in 1923, who sadly recently passed away. But to see into the life of somebody who was pre-war was so valuable for me. And somebody who was also incredibly working class, which is a conversation we always leave out usually with sustainability, is that class is a big issue too. Lots of the things she did as a child and as a young adult are the things that we now kind of praise as the saviors of everything. And, you know, she was born in a world that didn't have like commercially available plastic. So it's incredible really the mess we've got ourselves into in such a short space of time. So I personally think it's about going back and looking at ideas that worked in the past and thinking about how can we combine those with technology to move forward. And I think that's how we can see some really interesting change. But perhaps we don't have to think too hard. Sometimes the solutions are really right there in front of us.
Tell us an example.
Well, for example, like this suit, I found it in a charity shop last week, and I thought, wow, it fits me quite well, which is rare, so I bought it. Or a simple denim shirt at Pinko that, you know, has gone through the sales. People that wanted it have bought it, and thinking, why don't we reinvent it to do it kind of for Christmas? So let's make it like a festive denim shirt. And then it has these huge taffeta sleeves because there was loads of taffeta left over from another collection that they'd bought and not used. Or me on my personal collection working with like the most amazing Tironi silk that Valentino couldn't buy because it had a slight flaw every 75 centimeters because there was something off on the 150-year-old loom that it was woven on, and thinking, well, how silly that we would not use that because it's the most incredible fabric I've ever seen in my life. So how special that I can then turn that into a coat and to see every so often these little blemishes and think, wow, that's the reason why I've got this. How nice, you know.
That is super inspiring.
Can I
Thank
just
you.
add something to Patrick? Yeah, because I'm just a little older than you, but there used to be a time where designers also sell their fabric with the pattern for people to do at home. And there was a really lovely thing about it where you aspire to own something from that designer and you can do it yourself because these people, older people, learned how to sew, learned how to cut patterns, and that kind of skill set that is slightly disappearing is coming back through the business models of Depop and other initiatives, or let's say startups, even though they are bigger than startups now. And it's fascinating to come back to some things that our grandmother used to share and do, and sometimes share with their children and grandchildren.
Yeah, there was an amazing, I think mine stopped working now. Gosh, musical chairs. There was an amazing, is it working? Yeah, story that I found out at my grandmother's funeral from her sister, that because my grandma's sister was 15 years younger than her, that grandma used to make herself dresses in the late 20s and 30s, and then with the scraps she'd make a mini version of the same dress for her sister. I thought, what an amazing story. You know, just little things like that. I think it's so nice and becomes so personal and relatable sometimes when we really dive into sustainability, and it can be really amazing. I think it's so fantastic that we can create these stories, and you kind of lose that when things are kind of mass-produced and things are moved away and everything.
I think there's an exhibit in the exhibition called the 50-year service shirt, and it's an initiative to think of how do you keep things in the system, and often it's that there isn't the structure or the system in order to bring things back. People perhaps take it to a charity shop or they throw it away. But this is by Becky Early, and it's the idea is you get the shirt in white, year one, and then you buy the service, and after year 7 you take it back and it gets printed upon. Then sort of year 12 it gets printed on again with a different pattern. Then it becomes black, and then it becomes the lining for a jacket, and then you can make it into an accessory. And I think it's that sort of, you would pay for that whole service when you bought it. And it may be that you don't have it all those times, but it will go to somebody. But it's thinking of the whole system. So rather than on the sort of individual basis, that you're thinking of putting these structures in place so that it becomes easy to take your things back or to return them to the right people.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the whole beauty about circular economy has to be system change, and we have to look at the materials from, somebody asked, when you design, you need to think about from the very, very beginning, what you're going to do, what is the materials. So you think about, okay, this is the end of life, if it has an end of life, and actually how do you extend that life? And I mean, ideally will not have an end of life, a little bit like Hermes. I'd like to go back to you, Bertrand, because I love to understand, well, 2 questions. First and foremost, do you think that you ever will go into circularity, not for your products because they hold the value themselves, but actually if you will go into circular business models, so if you would actually think about that in terms of doing it yourself instead of allowing all of us to do it, I mean all of you to do it.
I'm not sure to understand the question. But
well, I mean, your product has a second life. You know, you would not throw away an Hermes bag. So would you actually think about circularity in terms of doing it yourself? Like, you know, how you will actually invest in that circular business model? Will you think about this incorporated into your mix in terms of a business perspective, or you would allow Vestiaire Collective, The Real, everybody else to do that instead of you owning that piece of the value?
We have been thinking of doing that, but at one point we have to focus on what we know the best. And if we have some friends who can do it in a nice way, why not? You know, we cannot control. We want to control the production, the products from the source, then to the end. But then the life it has to be free. You know, we are not control freak. So that's the point. On circularity, if I may just 30 seconds give something. to give back the life of the products. We also give back, we put back some villages in France back to life. We create about 250 new positions for workers, for craftsmen a year, but we don't put them around Paris. We put them in places in France where unemployment is very high. And we make an agreement with the mayor of the little city where the postman left, when the bakery closed, when the pub closed. And then when you put 250 people there, you create about 2 new jobs beside the 250 jobs created by Hermès. And I think this is kind of circularity, because I come back to my point. Of course, we have specialists and you can speak about the products, but I like to speak about the people. And I think that circularity starts with people. And I think that our small gesture of creating 250 jobs in a place in France every year, or even 6 months, because we are quite successful for the time being. So I like the word "quite" in this country, because it means a lot. I think it's a way to be circular for us, but the life of the products, we don't want to control it till the end. You know, it has to be free. We do our best for the products to last long. That's it.
Mm-hmm. No, fair enough. I mean, I was asking a question. Obviously, Kering just invested into circular platforms, and that's what is part of my question. So there's no intention to do so, not in the moment. Okay, thank you. I'd like to open this to the floor, because I'm sure you have burning questions. So I don't know if you have any questions, please put your hands up.
Oh, I'm loud enough. My question is for Hasna, because you were speaking about where you're from. And I'm from Louisiana, and it's been very much impacted by erosion, the same way that you probably have seen it in your own home country. So I've seen it every day, and it's scary. Has that impacted how you have developed your business, seeing what your own family and your own countrymen, and being from a marginalized community, how that impacts them not only now, but in the future?
Actually, the whole inspiration behind Save Your Wardrobe is based on my family and how they manage their resources. So they lived in Jerba, so it's an island in the south of the country, and water is really scarce there, and everything. They built the house in order to collect rainwater and filter it through the stones of the house, and then collect it in a well. So everything is thought and designed in a circular way. So as I grew up, I was very involved in those things, and I hated it, and I didn't see the value back then. I was young, and my grandmother was behind me, come do this, come do that. And when I moved to Europe, I've realized the difference in lifestyles, the difference in consumption. And it was 20 years ago already that I moved to Paris first to finish my studies. And then I've realized that how people were shopping, and as not based on a need or something, it was just a social activity, wearing it once for something, an event that night, and then throwing it away. And it was already the case 20 years ago. And what was really struck me is that some habits and reflexes that my grandmother or my aunts and even my mother used to do as part of their day-to-day life was a little bit lost in France and in London as well. And that's the Europe is my kind of benchmark. And so I thought, how can I bring these kind of values that I grew up with and marry them with the technology and opportunities that we can adopt easily. So yeah, very much of everything behind Save Your Wardrobe, from the use, the after use, the modular part of fashion, and the selling as well. Because another part as well that is completely lost even in Tunisia is this kind of skill owners or knowledge owner, know-how owners that collect things from cities or streets and then bring them back home. They repair them and they put them back on sale, but in a very funny way where they just walk the streets and yell, this is secondhand, do you want to buy something? And people go outside, just look at what they have to sell. And that's all. And it's at a smaller scale what we can see today. And hopefully, with the right technology, we can bring that vision in at a larger audience.
Thank you. I mean, the innovation is coming. There is a lot of money put right now into really scaling these business models because the future is really circular. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Victoria Kiseleva. So I have a question. I think sustainability is becoming a bit of a luxury, and because employing people in France is costing more. Sourcing materials from Europe is costing more than sourcing materials in Asia, and like conglomerates like Hermès and Kering and Louis Vuitton, they have the ability to think about it. But we have a whole side of the economy, and I know that Zara and H&M are starting to use recyclable materials. H&M, if you give them, I think a kilo of old clothes, they give you £5 voucher. So they're trying to do that. But ultimately, their business model is very different from the luxury universe. So is there a way you think, or maybe Bertrand, you already collaborate or exchange ideas with the likes of H&M and Zara and Gap to see how the whole entire economy can collaborate together and not just the luxury companies? So it's a question for everybody, but yeah.
What I can say is that when was that 2 years ago, Hermes and other companies signed a pact in France in order not to destroy anymore the products. Try your best. So the goal is to not to destroy, at least to keep 95% of the whole collection over 5 or 6 seasons. And we restarted when was that 2 weeks ago in London to have some public sales, which is quite unique for us. Usually we just do that in France, but it's part of an effort. And we were about, I think, 40 companies in France signing the agreement. So we should embark with more companies, but I think it's a first step, and I think a long journey start with the first step. It's not perfect, as I said at the beginning, but I think it's very meaningful to do that. Voilà.
Thank you. Any other hands up? Yes, please.
Question for both Diana and for Bertrand. When you look at what it costs a fashion business, be it a mass market retailer or a luxury brand, what it costs them now to invest, and I say invest rather than spend, to turn their business model around, to become future-proofed against either the pressure from investors, wholesale partners, or consumers for not being sustainable enough in the years to come. What would you say is a fair percentage of turnover for a business to allocate so that they don't completely destroy their bottom line and alienate their shareholders, but yet they're still actually putting back a certain amount every year into future-proofing themselves? Or is there a magic number? I mean, of course, it's different for every business, but if you had to put a number on it, what would you? A question for both of you.
You first.
Anya, help.
Well, we just did some analysis, and we were looking at. I'm being a friend of Bertrand here because I don't know the answer either. But we just did some analysis, and we were looking. Well, if we just offset everything that we did, let's start with that. And obviously, we want to do better than that. Let's just look at that cost and try and build it into our margin, basically. And that's something we did. I can't do the number off the top of my head, but that's where we started, just put it into our pricing, essentially.
Thank you, Anya. And just answering your question, there's not a magic number. You can start small. I mean, the main thing is, for example, if you're in the UK, turn to Octopus, look at hydrogen, renewables. That is low-hanging fruit. You can do that right away. The second point is think about who you want to work with. And, like you said, just know your suppliers, or trying to know your suppliers, and put a very, very clear it's like dating. What is the things that you will say no to? Not the things that you will say yes to, but what are the things that you will not compromise? What are the deal breakers? And that is how you can interview your suppliers and see, okay, are they good for me or not? And they have agreement with your values. I think that number three is just do partnership with them. So don't expect them, I think the relationship, a little bit what Anya was saying, the relationship with the supplier is very different what it was to what it will be as well, in terms of like how you can partner with them. So it's not, supply chain is not something that sits on the side of your business, but it's part of your business. And the reality is that 92% of all emissions come from the global north, which is where we sit. I come from the global south, like you. And the majority of emissions come from the global south. So in order for them to develop sustainably, we need to invest in their development, which is a little bit of what Anya is saying, is like, its offset is mainly, okay, how do you pay them on time and how do you help them to that development? And I think that when that happens, the world will become slightly turning into this. We started the conversation talking about COP26. I mean, the G20 and the G7 has failed to put KPIs against the 100 billion that it needs to be given to the global south to develop. Like, you know, NATO have said 2% of all GDP goes into guns, but nobody has said 2% of GDP goes into actually helping the developing world to develop. This is what needs to be the outcome for COP. And I think everybody, private or public companies, if you start working with your suppliers, there's small little steps that you can do in order to turn around. So it's not about turnover, it's about will. And when there is a will, there is a way, especially with strong young women. So I think that's, yeah, I think that is possible. One last question for every one of you. What piece of advice would you give the audience to turn into circular economy, or to turn their business into a circular economy business?
I'm not a huge advice on business, but it was really just to be aware of the things around us and what the resources that go into everything that we need to live with, and everything, and to care for everything, and not to see it as something that is throwaway, but really to see that everything has been made with energy and resources that are finite.
Thank you. Patrick?
For me, I think from a fashion point of view, you should shop your own wardrobe as a start and see what you've actually still got, what you already own, and maybe what could you do with it to make it something you would wear if you're not wearing it. But it's a great place to start. It can be really exciting, actually.
I love that. Absolutely. I need your number so you can actually reshop my and yours.
I mean, I agree with Patrick here. Shop your own wardrobe. Try to understand what you have. Your own wardrobe is there. And the fascinating part is during COVID, people were stuck at home, and we've seen how people were downloading the app and looking and uploading their items and falling in love again with the things that they bought in the past. And yeah, as an individual, I would encourage that kind of audit of what you have and your own shopping behaviors. And as a business, listening to your consumers and listening as well to the fact that linear business models are reaching its limits. And again, to discover opportunities that circular business models that can be profitable as well if you are creative enough and if you incorporate that in your whole strategy and make room for it.
Thank you.
So I'm the last one, so it's most difficult. Everything has been said already. So I'm just going to give you a little quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is a French author. He wrote The Little Prince. We don't inherit the land from our fathers and from our parents. We borrow it from our children. So I think it's if we keep that in mind, it should help us to move forward.
Thank you. But let's not forget what Anya said. I mean, shopping is what keeps businesses alive. And, you know, of course, we need to look at the planet, but it has to be 3 Ps: people, planet, and profit, because otherwise, if you decouple them, you know, but shop for the businesses that actually are not doing the right thing for the world. And I guess my last thought is, like, let's make sure that climate change does not become the moon landing. You know, it has to be transparent. It cannot belong just to government, and it has to be everyone's business. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for this amazing panel as well, and this amazing evening. Thank you to all of you who've taken time from your families, from your friends, from your children to be, and really to be with us and make us think, which is, I think, what the key value is of this kind of events. So we have a cocktail now, which will be from the door just behind there. There's another room, and I hope as many of you as possible will be able to stay and talk about what you've heard tonight, or other things. And just the last thing on the sustainability subject that I'd like to share, because these are just 2 things that have resonated with me recently, is that we need to move from a take, make, waste model, which is the linear model that has been referred to tonight, to a model which develops prosperity but decouples it from growth, right? We all have been used to more is better, but actually more is not always better, and we see the limits now of more things are not better. It's killing the planet we're on. So I think we've heard a lot of things tonight, so thank you again, and let's have a glass of champagne. And thank you to La Durée for the lovely things that we will eat later.